Greetings. This is the first Sunday of Lent, a time of self-reflection, a time when we are purposeful about doing something that will strengthen our faith foundations. Normally we fast, abstain, or give up something during this time. This last year, from March to February, it felt like we gave up a lot of things already. But this Lenten season, let's not think about what we give up, but let's consider a new approach. We made room in our lives by necessity because of the pandemics. Now we can take on something positive. We're not forgetting about the people or the freedom of movement or the things that we lost this last year. We are marching on into the future with a new way of approaching life, a new way of approaching living. Genesis is one of my favorite books because it talks about beginnings. The obvious story is about creation and Adam and Eve. But today's scripture shares another story of beginnings, and that's starting over after the great flood. The passage stands out because it reminds me of this year's Lent. Although the calendar year during that time isn't exactly the way we observe it, Genesis 7:11 says that the flood started on the second month of the 17th day. Lent this year started on Ash Wednesday, which is the second month of the 17th day. I like to think of that as a God incident. We have some cleansing from the flood of things that have happened to us during these last 12 months. Let us use this season to strengthen ourselves so that we can renew our covenant with God and start over like Adam and Eve and care for all of God's creation, because we are reminded that God said on the sixth day that everything created is good. And also the promise that God had with Noah in Genesis 9, verses 12 through 13, when God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I've set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of covenant between me and the earth." As we go into this new Lenten season, the Baltimore Washington Conference has a document called Spiritual Disciplines, Awakening to Life. We may use that document to help shape our Lenten season. The document reminds us that the Wesleyan means of grace encourages us to be courageous and forward-leading mission congregation that practices spiritual disciplines. John Wesley taught that God's grace is unearned. We must not be idle waiting to experience grace, but we are to engage in the means of grace. These means of grace can be divided into works of piety and works of mercy for individuals and for communities. I've shared these before, but I will share them again. Works of piety include individual practices of reading, meditating, and studying scriptures. We pray, we fast, we regularly attend worship virtually through healthy living and sharing our faith with others. And communal practices include regularly sharing in the sacraments, or in our case, the love feast, Christian conferencing, being accountable to each other, like when we take time to hang out in our virtual hallway and Bible study on Wednesday nights with Rick. Works of mercy include individual practice of doing good works, visiting the sick, which also includes calling and writing now during this pandemic, visiting those in prison, we can call and we can write, feed the hungry, we can volunteer with our ministry here, and giving generously to the needs of others. Communal practices include seeking justice, ending oppression and discrimination, because Wesley challenged Methodists to end slavery, and addressing the needs of the poor. These practices strengthen us to grow, transform, and empower faith communities. This year of Lent, these 40 days leading up to Easter, Bishop Latrell Easterling and the Cabinet are calling upon the people of the Baltimore Washington Conference to fast one day a week. The document says that fasting is biblical and it is a cited time. It is a practice used by people in any number of circumstances to align themselves with the will of God. Jesus fasted and calls upon his disciples to fast. Throughout time and tradition, fasting is the most universally applied discipline. John Wesley believed so strongly in the spiritual power of fasting that he refused to ordain anyone into the Methodist ministry who did not fast on Wednesday and Fridays. For those who are new to fasting, it is important to note that this practice is always accompanied by prayer. It is an exercise of penitence and sacrifice that builds self-control and demonstrates our reliance on God. When we fast, we reorient ourselves away from the things that distract us and places our focus back on God. The intention of fasting is not to deprive us, but is to place our hearts in alignment with God's will. As David wrote in Psalm 69:10, I humbled my soul with fasting. For anyone with health concerns, it is always necessary to consult a doctor before fasting. So this Lenten season, the intention of the conference-wide fast is to take people out of the realm of the physical to focus their attention on God and to shift attention from the immediate things that demand our energy and our attention and put it back on God and who God is calling us to be. Bishop Eastland shared a video for this Lenten season, and we will share it as soon as I finish this message. So, as we start this new Lenten season, we ask that you listen to the words of the bishop and be a prayer about how God is calling you during this season to cleanse and to come back into covenant. Thank you.